Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much, Madhu, for inviting me to speak. And it's always wonderful now, and particularly in today's day and age, for feminists to have sober reflections and friendly disagreements. One of the things that I really liked about your book, Madhu, is that there is also an invitation to engage in dialogue, not just with the state and the law, but also with feminists. Talk amongst ourselves about a number of things. And the consent is an issue that we need to talk about. Now, this is chapter 2 of the resource book that Madhu has. And this chapter is actually trying to see how the law constructs and understands consent. And one of the first things that she points out, which is useful for us to know, is that the age of sexual consent is one that has actually changed over a period of time. It's not something that has remained stable, because sometimes you might actually think that, 18 age of consent means there's a bell that's going to go on, you're going to be not sexually innocent anymore, and things will happen, and you will get to know this. And she talks about how in 1860, when the IPC was enacted, the age was 12 years, then 1891, 12 years, 1925, 14 years, 1940, 16 years, and then 2012, 18 years. Now, what does that do to consent? If you're going to be 18 to wait to have sex, you are going to be a criminal, right? So it's not just the people, it's not just the people who are covered under 377 who are criminals then. We have a pretty large body of criminals in this country.
In this room, I'm sure.
In this room, perhaps. Well, I mean, given the kind of things that Madhu has talked about, I think pretty much each one of us can fit into some category of criminality. Certainly, women of easy virtue, for instance. So, this then raises a slightly contentious issue that I think feminists need to talk about, which is the idea of children and sexuality. And think of 1 to 18. I mean, that perhaps is the most transformative range in anybody's life. Huge changes take place. And yet, when we look at the law, we tend to see it as this one homogeneous moment. And it has been quite impossible to have a discussion about children and sexuality outside the ambit of child sexual abuse. And therefore, I think that feminists need to think a little bit about that. And I was very grateful in the book to see that Madhu actually talks about two very interesting concepts that one doesn't get to hear when we talk about children and sexuality. One is the idea of evolving capacity, that everybody is not the same, and how do we try and understand a child's evolving capacity. And the other idea is that of age proximity. So how close are you in age? Because that 1 to 18 is actually quite a giant range of ages. And the manner in which we tend to, even today, deny the sexual agency of the child. And I think that again is something that debates on consent feminists must take into account. The other interesting debates on consent that are taking place around the world, for instance, is around intersex people who are being assigned sex, at the time of birth. And intersex communities are raising this issue. Who can consent to the assigning gender to a child? Very often even parents are not taken into account, and some kind of a normalizing medical procedure is followed to turn this person into either a girl or a boy or something like that. The other issue of consent involves people with physical or intellectual disabilities, and we need to consider that as well. The other, very contentious one, is the whole idea of the right for the woman to have abortion. Most feminists will always agree the woman has a right to abortion, but unless there is a girl child. Have we actually dealt with that issue enough? Are we fully giving the right to the woman to over her body if we say that, well, there are conditions that apply for you to be able to take a decision? The other more complex issue is that by calling the fetus a girl child, are we not also perpetuating fetal personhood, which is a right-wing idea? The The other debate, which I think needs to be had, and I'm doing all this in a rush because I know that the 7-minute rule will soon apply to me, is that the idea of sexual consent. And we have tended to see this as something kind of easy. It is not. And here I'd like to refer to the work of somebody called Shahana Siddiqui, who works from Bangladesh. And she has been working on issues of consent. And where she works is for